Okay, I'm gonna take this raw vocal recording, and I'm gonna turn it into this. By only using one plugin. Yes, you heard me. One plugin. And that plugin is VocalChain, part of Cubase 13. So if I only had one plugin to work with when it comes to mixing vocals, I would probably work with this one, since it has all the processing you need to mix pro-sounding vocals. So if we look at the interface we have with VocalChain, on the left we have the list of all the processing divided into 3 sections: the clean section, the character section, and the sand section. Okay, so we're gonna go through all of those. Now, first, if we look at the clean section, there's a cut filter, a gate, a DSer, a dynamic EQ, compression, EQ, pitch, which is actually pretty cool. All part of the clean section of the plugin. So the first thing that I like to do when mixing a vocal is to add a high pass filter, aka low cut filter. So this one has a high pass and a low pass filter that I can activate right away. So it's pretty easy access, which I did in this case. But before starting to process the vocal, the first thing I do when working with this plugin is to adjust the input gain level. Okay, so I want to reach this green spot right here. It's basically gain staging the vocal inside that plugin, and what I'm reaching is that green zone, okay? And this is kind of the sweet spot to work with this plugin. So once I have the vocal into that zone, I'm gonna be good to go, and I know that all the processing are gonna work well while mixing this vocal. So the first on the list is the cut filter, which is basically a high pass filter. And there's a high pass and low pass filter under this processor. Now, all the processors or modules basically within each sections can be moved around, which makes it pretty flexible. But in my case, I am gonna start with the cut filter module, okay, to add a bit of cut below 100 Hertz. And this is something that I do on lots of vocals, you know, when I mix a song. So I tend to just get rid of the rumble or unwanted low noise that I can get on a vocal recording by just using a high pass filter. Now the gate is next. I don't use the gate on this one. Those vocals were recorded in a well-controlled studio environment, so I don't have any noise to deal with, you know. But in the case where you have some noise to deal with, you can use a gate, no problem. Now the DSer is very useful to control the sibilance of a vocal. And what I like to do is to bring one early in the stage, okay? So I like to have that module almost before anything else. So I just put it after the filters, and that's it. In my case, there's some sibilance going on at around 10K. So I can move that around, readjust the range I want to work within, and that's it. And then there's the amount of reduction, the threshold that I can put automatic, or I can manually set it up. So what I'm gonna do for now, let me bypass most of the modules and just keep the ones that I have inside the clean section. Okay, so that's going to be good. So I'm adjusting the threshold manually, and we'll see how that's going to go. Next on the list, I'm working with a dynamic EQ, and there's one right here available for me to work with. It's a 2-band EQ, works in a dynamic way, meaning that it's going to compress the frequency that I want to attenuate instead of just bringing those frequencies down. Okay, so it does it in a very more transparent way. So, and I kind of like that, especially when I work the low mids of this vocal in particular. Okay, then I'm gonna add some compression. So I do all that stuff like the cutting, the correction with a DSer, working with the dynamic EQ to control the energy that I have on this vocal in the low mids before I jump into my first compressor. And the cool thing about this compressor is that I have access to 4 different types of compressors, and the one that I'm gonna work with is the Vocal Comp. Okay, cool. So I'm going to leave it as is. I think that's going to work well for the first compressor because I'm going to add a second one later, okay? So stick around for this one. EQ. Let's EQ and tone shape a bit of the sound. So a bit more of reduction in low frequencies, also on the mid-range. So just to clear things up a bit more, a bit of a boost. In this case, at around 4K, just to add a bit more clarity and a bit more edge to the vocal. And then the cool thing that I have is pitch. Now, pitch can be used as a simple pitch correcting module, which I'm not doing on this one. I'm actually going to use it as an effect to kind of beef up the vocal, okay? So by just kind of doubling the vocal at an octave lower, which is quite nice. I'm going to solve the vocals for this one. And what I did here, let me just bring that mix knob to the max so you can hear the actual effect. I detuned the whole thing 1 octave lower. Which doesn't sound very good at this point in time, but if I blend it with the original signal, and I don't need to blend it by a lot, to make it effective, this is how it's going to sound like. Poussé par la pensée d'une nuit, entouré de l'infini. So this is pretty cool. I kind of like that. If I bypass what I have so far, let's bring back the music. Poussé par la pensée d'une nuit. Okay, let's bring everything back. Poussé par la pensée d'une nuit, entouré de l'infini. Okay, it's a bit more stable, compression is working well, it's a bit more clear. I still have a bit of sibilance going on, which I'm going to try to fix stuff up in the next section, which is character. Before we jump on the next section, I have a gift for you. By clicking the link down below, you'll be able to download my vocal mixing guides 100% free. Again, the link is down below. Okay, the next section inside that plugin is character. Now we're talking about saturation, harmonics, again, more EQ, more compression, more de-essing, okay? So let's work this out by adding a bit of saturation, mainly tape saturation to the vocal sound, just to add a bit more thickness, okay? And bring the vocals a bit more up front. And what I kind of like is to use tape saturation with the filter bank by focusing on a range of frequencies only instead of the full range, okay? And this is something I can do right here. So now I'm focusing more on the low mids, the mid range, you know, and that will create some harmonic distortion. Une poussière de vie éclatante de sourire, m'amenant dans le moment de l'infini. Okay, I think this is going to work pretty well. I'm just going to bring that down just a bit. Then let's jump on the second compressor. Actually, you know what? Let me bring that compressor down a bit. Okay, I'm going to bring it just before we finalize that vocal mix. Next on the list, I'm going to bring a second EQ. Okay, now when I work with an EQ, and that goes for the first EQ also in the clean section, is I have a choice between 3 types of EQs. The studio EQ that we looked at earlier, and also a Pultec type EQ, the P1A and the M5, which is focusing mainly on the mid-range. But now I'm going to work with the P1A, again, Pultec type EQ, just to boost the top end. And this is kind of a trick that I like to do because it has a very nice top end sound. And just to add a bit more, I would say more air to the vocal sound, make it a bit more bright, but a kind of a smooth bright. So what I do is I boost at around 15K and I do a quick attenuation at 20K just to add a bit more control. But that gives me a very nice top end for this vocal. Okay, next, let's work on the second DSer. In the character section, there's also a dynamic filter, which I'm not going to use at this point in time, okay? I'm going to wait a bit to see if this is going to be useful, but it can be useful, you know, to control a bit of the top end, get more control in a dynamic way. Even if I added a bit of top end with the previous EQ, I can add a bit of control, you know, with that boost using a dynamic EQ afterwards. So anyways, I'm going to check if I'm going to need that or not. But I am going to work with a second DSer and also a compressor that I'm using in parallel. Okay, so first the DSer. That's good. Then the compressor works in parallel, so I'm using the extreme compressor. I'm compressing a lot, but again, I'm just using it at 24% just to bring the vocals a bit more upfront, add a bit more of perceived loudness to the vocal. I kind of like that, it brings it up front. The exciter is actually very, very nice also. I'm gonna wait a bit to see how things goes, but this will add some very nice high harmonics to the sound, which can be pretty cool. For now, I'm gonna bypass it, but then let's go and look at the send section. And this is pretty cool. My tip for this section, even if your vocal is a mono recording like the one that I have right now in my session, the channel needs to be in stereo if you want to take full advantage of the send section. Meaning that if you want to use the imager, which we're going to look at, the delay and the reverb as stereo effects. If you have this plugin inserted on a mono channel, those effects are going to sound mono. So I just switched the channel to be a stereo channel, but my recording is still a mono recording, okay? So now the send section is kind of mimicking an effects channel track basically. So the imager is the first module we have, and this will kind of act like a wide doubling effect on the vocal. I'm just gonna solo this one.
Poussé par la pensée d'une nuit, entouré de l'infini, ma main dans la sienne ainsi.
So I kind of like that, you know, it just brings the vocal to sound a bit more wide. Then let's add the delay. So the delay, we have the choice between a mono delay, a stereo delay, or a ping pong delay. Again, the filter bank is very useful. I love to filter out the incoming signal that goes into a delay or a reverb, or you know, a QD reverb or delay itself, which I can do by working with the filter bank. So basically, I'm focusing only on this range of frequencies for my delay sound.
Poussé par la pensée d'une nuit, entouré de l'infini, ma main dans la sienne.
It gives me the chance to craft a transparent type of delay, which I kind of like. Feedback, the time that you can sync to specific delay times, or you can just unsync and do everything in milliseconds. This is up to you. Feedback level, the amount of ducking. Now, ducking is actually pretty nice. It actually ducks the effect while the vocal is singing, basically. So I'm careful with this effect, but when I use it gently, it does work pretty well. And the send level will give you basically more or less delay. You can send that delay to the reverb directly if you want to. That could create a very nice effect. I'm not doing it at the moment, but this is an option you can do. If I activate the reverb, same thing, the filter bank is accessible, which is nice. So same here, I do filter out the reverb, so I can keep more of a focus inside this range, which is in between 300 hertz to 8K, and I get this type of reverb.
Par la pensée d'une nuit.
Very nice. It's going to help the reverb to sound way more transparent, on top of using the ducker also at 30% in this case, which works pretty well. I do added also a bit of pre-delay. Now the pre-delay is cool. Again, it's going to just delay the start of the reverb. So again, my vocal is going to stay up front, and the reverb more in the back. So the combination of the pre-delay with the ducker helps to keep my vocal pretty dry, but at the same time with a very nice reverb tail. Then you can adjust the time of the reverb, and you can choose from different types of reverbs also. Ambience bright, cathedral dark, chamber warm, chorusing warm, you know, so on and so forth. I use the Lush Pop. Sounds pretty good.
Poussé par la pensée d'une nuit.
Okay, if I add the delay into the package, and let's bring back the mix.
Poussé par la pensée d'une nuit, entouré de l'infini, ma main dans la sienne ainsi. Rien que maintenant je vis une poussière de vie, éclatante de sourire, m'amenant dans le moment.
Okay, I kind of like that. I love the sound of the exciter, but I'm just going to try to control the top end just a bit with the dynamic filter.
Poussé par la pensée d'une nuit, entouré de l'infini, ma main dans la sienne ainsi. Rien que maintenant je vis une poussière de vie, éclatante de sourire, m'amenant dans le moment de l'infini.
Pretty cool. I like it. So this is my final result by using only one plugin. It's quite impressive actually, you know, that you have all that processing inside one single plugin that is also a stock plugin. So there you go. So if you're using Cubase 13, you are gonna love this one. And if you wanna know more about some Cubase tips and tricks, you can watch this following video. Now let me know on your side what you like to use when it comes to mixing vocals, whether it's this plugin or any other plugins that you like to work with. List everything down below. Until next time, take care and see you.